There's an old adage that people like what they know when they know what they like. And as an organist, you have an awesome responsibility when introducing a new hymn to your people. You really cannot be too careful or too simple. Of course, the most basic way to introduce the hymn is typically to line it out with a good unison introduction, line by line. If you are working with a choir or have a very fine cantor or quartet or soloist, use every opportunity to introduce the hymn as a prelude, as an introit, even to have a congregational rehearsal. The best way to learn is through positive repetition. It also helps to have introductions and comments in the church bulletin. And if your minister can offer some words of explanation about the theology and about the origin of the hymn, this will really pique people's interest in singing it. As you introduce the hymn, if you decide to use a full registration, consider lining out the solo or the melody with a solo stop. After you have reached the end of your introduction, make sure that you have a very clear cadence, that you've set up the exact length of time between stanzas, and begin the first stanza, making sure that the melody is always very, very clear. Sometimes, depending on the registration and on the voicing of the organ which you are playing, it is good to avoid using a mixture stop, because since a mixture stop activate many higher partials, this can sometimes confuse the exact pitch line if you're playing 4-part harmony on one keyboard. You might want to consider adding a mixture stop on the last stanza after your congregation has had a chance to make friends with its new hymn.
I think it's appropriate to use new hymns. After all, you don't make your worship meaningful to the people involved, the 20th century people, unless it deals with relevant images and symbols which are found in good contemporary hymns. This does not mean that you should forsake the tradition. The people must also sing that which is in their tradition, the best tradition, else they don't know who they are. But they will not know how to be the people of God in the 20th century if they only sing the old hymns. Yes, they have to sing the new hymns. There must be a following of the biblical injunction to sing a new song unto the Lord. Not just because it's in the Bible it says to do it that way, but because they need to be using mind, heart, soul, and body in dealing with contemporary life. And that's not done just with the old hymns.
We would not want to sing entirely new hymns in worship, but new hymns bring a new expression, a new revitalized way to talk about the old story. And just as we need to, from time to time, in fact constantly, I think, refresh our ideas and get new enthusiasm, new hymns do that. They state things in fresh new ways. It's the old story that we do not turn away from the old story, but it's stating it with new language which people understand. Some of the old hymns have words that we stumble over and the children don't understand. The language then is refreshed and new, and the new hymns have new concepts about interpreting the old story, and they bring in contemporary experiences. I'm thinking of hymns probably most obvious when we talk about the glories of the possibilities that have become known to us. For example, space travel are mentioned in hymns. I have been told that for many, These kinds of hymns are entrees for college students and others who are highly scientifically oriented to begin to think about faith, because the language is up to date, and it is the old truths are expressed in ways that they are used to thinking, in terms that they're used to thinking about.
I also think that part of the thing of doing new hymns, in the practical end, is that for many of us, we need some assurance that we're going to do it enough to justify the energy we put into learning it. In other words, to sing a new hymn once, for people who find learning new things a bit hard, is, I think, a breach of contract. If you think it's important enough to sing once, it ought to be important enough to sing several times, not several times in a row, but several times, or at least that at this same time next year it's going to come back. And there needs to be some, I feel that it's only fair to have some sort of discussion with people as to why you think it's worth singing. I don't mean a 20-minute talk, I mean one sentence. And some indication of when it's going to come back. But I think if it's hard to get into deploying your energy for something that you know is not going to last. But if it seems appropriate when you do it, then you feel okay about it.
Well, I think you can introduce new hymns several different ways. Sometimes I'll introduce a new hymn by doing it before the actual service begins. We'll have a practice or a warm-up and introduce a new hymn by maybe during the time of welcoming and announcements. And I might have someone sing through it once and have the congregation then sing it. And then when it comes time for the hymn to be introduced within the service, the congregation is not getting it cold or totally new. Another way I think to introduce new hymns would certainly be to have, say, a hymn of the month. To introduce a new hymn by maybe the first Sunday having a soloist sing the hymn. Maybe the second Sunday having the choir do a choral arrangement on the hymn. The third Sunday maybe use it as just simply a text that is used at an appropriate place in the service. And then the fourth Sunday have the congregation sing it. Now the danger is that then that's the last time we ever sing it or we ever see it. And so I think once we introduce the hymn, we need to keep reintroducing it, whether we've done it within 4 weeks in a given month or whether we just do it on a given Sunday. I often chuckle when I hear a pastor or a musician say, "Oh, that new hymn that we learned today, it was awful. I'll never use that again." But anything that's new to us takes time to become familiar. So I think the key is that once we introduce it, we keep singing it until it becomes comfortable and familiar to us.
Well, this is the important part, because new hymns really do need a special introduction. Very often new hymns are not as easy to sing. They certainly are not as much fun at the beginning as the old ones. We love the hymns we can sing by heart, especially the ones that we know the melodies, we can think about the words. But new hymns deserve special introductions. One of the ways I think, the best way I know of, is to introduce the hymn ahead of time, let's say to have a choir sing it the Sunday before, and to have the organist play it as prelude with a little sort of arrangement to make it into something special. But the day that the congregation sings it, it is very good, if it's possible, before the service to say a few words of introduction about the hymn. Something about the nature of its text or what's special about it. Perhaps the congregation already knows something about the people who have composed it and written the words. Then, at the time, it would be wonderful to rehearse a little bit before the service, if that's possible. But we know from experience that the thing that helps people to sing best is the sound of other people singing. So that what we have found most helpful is to have someone or some group sing the first stanza, perhaps the first 2 stanzas. And then the people are asked to join in for that first time that they sing. In that way, they will have heard the organist play it once. They will have heard someone, let's say, a soloist or even a children's choir, which is probably the best because everybody loves a children's choir and they will be in rapt attention when they sing. So that the organist will have played it once, and then the soloist or the choir will have sung 2 stanzas, and then the people have heard it and can join in singing it. And also, this gives the people the sense that singing this hymn is a special event, and that they really should give their attention to it, that this is something that will become a friend and an old acquaintance in later days, but this day it's special because we're learning it for the first time. I try to tell congregations, remind them that every hymn that they love was once unknown, brand new to them. They don't remember it, they just remember now it's an old friend, but there is always that first approach. And leadership, musicians and clergy need to help the people into it, first by showing them that this is an important undertaking to learn a new hymn, by assuring them that this is an interesting project and that they will enjoy it and they will eventually find a great friend in this new hymn.